Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Evil Live. I'm your host, Tyrone Williams, aka the Evil Tyrone. I've got some very special guests in the building tonight. Just some awesome guys. I've been on their show, talking about one of my favorite, movies, pretty much like not even just in horror, but just of all time. Whatever happened to Baby Jane. It's an awesome episode on their podcast, and you should definitely check it out. And also check out their show if you haven't checked it out. They've got an amazing podcast, Horror Queers, on the Blade Disgusting, podcast network. Trace and Joe in the building today. How are you guys doing?
Hello.
Good. How are you?
Yes, yes, I'm doing great. Great. Yes. Thank you guys again for joining me, and chopping it up tonight. It's gonna be a fun conversation. Like I'm a huge fan of what you guys do, and just the preparation and just the breakdowns that you guys do. Like I went on it and I'm like, man, these guys are so knowledgeable. Like just going into the background and the eras, and we're going through decades. We're going through actresses. We're getting to the nitty gritty beef behind the scenes, feuds, so to speak, So.
I will say for that, I felt kind of bad because I was like, oh, I really threw you in the deep end with this one. But like with Baby Jane, it was very much there's a lot of baby gays out here that don't know their history. And I felt like we had to just do like that long ass primer on what all went into that movie.
Oh yes. It was definitely a time. It was definitely a time, So you guys definitely check that out. We got Jaleesa Taylor in the building. Thank you for stopping by. We got Michael Anthony in the building. Thank you for stopping by. And then we got Polo Surf in the building. Eva, when are you gonna make your own feature? I donate the shit out of that. It's what we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm glad people are willing to donate. So let's get into it. How did you guys like? What's your horror origin story? First off, from each of you. So we'll start with Trace. Like, what's your horror origin story? How did you get into the genre?
I think it just mostly came from being told not to watch it for the longest time. So human instinct is like, well, I'm gonna watch it. I wasn't allowed to watch like R-rated movies growing up. My mom did not like horror. My dad did. And so he would frequently like watch these movies and then tell me about them. Like he would go like plot by plot beat, like to tell me about it. So for the longest time, I had all these images of what happened in Halloween, what happened in Nightmare on Elm Street, things like that, but I never got to watch them. So what I had to make do was with what was appropriate for me to watch. So I actually watched a shit ton of Scooby-Doo, and that's what got me into the horror genre. I think that's also what turned me into like liking slashers, because like Scooby-Doo has a lot of like Agatha Christie whodunit elements, which of course is now really popular now because of Scream. At least now, I mean, obviously whodunits were popular long before Scream existed. That's kind of what got me into it, honestly, like watching like a Scooby gang take down a bunch of bad guys wearing masks and monsters and shit. So,
That's awesome. I think we're due for another like really good Scooby-Doo remake, with tons, just add more horror elements.
I'm telling you, all you got to do is do a live action remake of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and it's like, that's horror gold right there. Like, the thing is, I don't know how you would make that live action and not like, and completely alienate your child audience, because even though there's no gore in it, like the zombies are grotesque looking. So I don't know.
Oh yeah. I don't think we're ready, but I don't know. I think that we need it. We may not be ready, but we need it. We need it for sure.
I'm ready for it.
What about you, Joe?
So mine is a little bit different from Trace. I usually credit my sister for getting me into horror films. So we would watch a lot of movies, but typically kind of like Trace, actually, that way my parents would censor some of the things that I was allowed to watch. Like I had really, really bad nightmares from watching the first Indiana Jones movie. So they were like, oh, our child is a scaredy cat. We cannot show him. But I'm sorry,
Okay.
people's faces melting
No, no, no,
off
no, no,
is
no, no.
terrifying.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know if I've told you this, but like the movie, because there is a movie that I watched that my mom was like, okay, well, he can't watch scary movies anymore. It was Beetlejuice. Like I had
Okay.
nightmares about Beetlejuice because my cousin had a doll where you pulled its string and like the head spun around. And apparently that
Mm.
scared the shit out of toddler me so much that I wasn't allowed to watch Beetlejuice until I was like after the age of 10.
Wow.
But
Wow.
continue.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So basically, whenever my parents would have a date night and my sister was left babysitting me, I like to joke that she would get her revenge on having to spend time with her younger brother by renting a bunch of really scary movies and trying to upset me. So I usually say the one that I remember the most is a Clive Barker double bill of obviously Candyman, but then also Hellraiser, which is like not gateway horror, not appropriate for like a preteen child. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I think both of those movies, that double feature, both had some themes in there that a child wasn't fully prepared to digest in that.
A lot of it went like this. It was like, this is sexy. It makes me feel things. I don't understand it.
Sexy. How old were you again?
Oh gosh, I would have been like maybe 12, 13.
Okay, that's
It's
better
like
than
on the
like
cusp,
being
right?
yeah, but you're not like
Yeah.
7 watching
No,
Hellraiser.
no. Well, I've heard of people where it's like, I was 5 years old watching Pinhead.
God.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely not. I think it's on a not gateway horror list. Hellraiser, most
Mhm.
definitely, most
You
definitely.
graduate to it. You move there
Yeah.
slowly, right?
Yes, yes. We got Bobby likes it spooky. Bobby Torres in the building. Hey Bobby, thanks for stopping by. So yeah, so how did you guys start the Horror Queers podcast? Because you guys are you have such a flow going, and you guys have so much chemistry. So how did you like come together and be like, you know what, we should do this, and do it well. You guys are doing it
This
well.
is this is all Joe's doing actually. Horror Queers would not exist without Joe and him reaching out to me saying, "Hey, do you want to do something?"
Yeah. So we're coming up on the end of the fourth year of the podcast, but Trace and were both writers for Bloody Disgusting. Did I get that right? Am I
No,
doing
you got it right. I was like, I thought we were in our 5th year, but we're going into our 5th year
Yeah.
next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Trace and I were both bloody disgusting writers. I mean, still are, but I noticed that he was one of the only writers who ever identified his sexuality in his writing. So when I was writing for them, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to get the only other notably identifiably queer writer on the site to do something. So we ended up writing a series of articles once a month, and then we graduated to twice a month when I convinced Trace, hey, we should talk about fun, sillier movies, not just queer themed films.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the course of a year, we negotiated, hey, we should try this as a podcast because even though we liked writing together, it was difficult to get a kind of flow because it would be, I write my part and then I send it over to him.
Yeah.
He does the same. So there's there's an exchange, but it's not live. It's not immediate. We don't get to off of each other.
But it was still intimidating though because neither one of us had any experience with podcasting. And I mean, this was we decided to do it in 2018. We premiered the
Yep.
podcast in 2019. So like podcasting wasn't new by this point. But like it was very much like, oh, I gotta buy a microphone, I gotta learn how to edit, I gotta learn Audacity or GarageBand or what have you. But it was definitely so we put it together and started it and have been growing it ever since January of 2019. I think that was our start
Mhm.
date.
Yep.
Wow, you guys were ahead of the curve, right before the pandemic hit, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, that was the sort of funny thing with seeing everybody who was like, well, I got nothing to do because I'm stuck at home, so I might as well. But I mean, we definitely weren't the first. We're not even the first queer horror podcast, of
No.
course. But it's been fun to watch other people dip their toes into it or grow and expand their reach as well.
Well,
It's just been fun to connect with other people.
I just think that the phrase queer horror has it's always, well, it hasn't always been there, but like it's been blowing up a lot since we started it. And yeah, I remember when we started the show, we kept a list of like other queer horror podcasts that were around. I think there were maybe 3 or 4 like others, like other notable ones when we started. But then over the years, like that list grew and grew and grew and grew. And so now it's kind of like you can't like turn anyway without seeing another queer horror. And that sounds like a negative thing to say. No, it's good. Like, and we're getting like so many more diverse voices, but like there's such a wealth of queer horror podcasts and voices out there now than there were even just 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh yeah. I can definitely, like, when I do, search like the horror podcast, like I do see a lot of representation, which is an awesome thing, because I feel like at a certain time as a horror fan, certain sectors of like, just the world wouldn't be represented, and I really wouldn't see it on like the main screen or the mainstream, so to see, horror queers and, people under the scares, and what is it, Scream Kings, and just awesome people doing awesome shit.
Well, and that's the thing too, I mean, like we tick one of these diversity boxes. We are both 2 gay men, but we are white, we are cisgender, and there are plenty of other non-white, non-cisgender podcasts out there that are looking at queer horror.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of it's definitely an awesome thing, and especially awesome to just mingle with the community, because I feel like the horror community is like some of the most accepting community that I've like been around, as far as like, just people of all walks of life and stuff like that, like of course there's some jerks, some, on the sidelines, but
I feel like that's a response to my facial reaction to you saying that. I was like, I agree mostly.
For me, I don't know, I've been interviewing people for probably almost 2 years now, and it's just been awesome. Like I really haven't had too many negative experiences yet, as of yet. It's just been very, very positive, and no matter what the topic is or what people are talking about, like it's always a fun time, so
yeah.
I think one of the reasons for that is just because there's such a diversity within the genre, right? So I find most people are pretty accepting if you say, oh, I don't really like that movie, but I do like this other movie. Like you can find common ground. And even when people do disagree, there's so many other things that they can talk about. It's not like, oh, I don't like romantic comedies. Okay, well, we're done. Like there's no further conversation to be had there.
And that's the difference too, between saying, oh, I don't like that and X is bad. I mean, the two can both be very true, absolutely. Yeah. But like saying something that wasn't for me is a very different thing than being an asshole, being like, this movie is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
We still do get, I think, in my opinion, too many horror people who say that movie sucked and I didn't like it. And it's like, well, there's a difference between the movie sucking and you not liking it, and they're not the same.
If that's the case, and you think both of those are true, that's great. Talk about why.
Oh yeah, like I love like just creating a safe space for people to express their opinions and stuff. Because sometimes, I may not love a movie, like for instance, when the Evil Dead Rise came out, it wasn't at the top of, my list or whatever. But, I know that it's somebody's first movie. People, it's a lot of people who love it, so I'm not going to bury it in the ground. I'm just going to be like, you know what? It's not for me,
But like, did you not like Evil Dead Rise, or was it just not the best thing in the world for you?
You know what it was? It was because I'm such a huge Evil Dead fan. So I came in looking for like 2013 vibes, and I don't think I got that per se,
But you know what though? Even the remake 2013, I mean, like, I think it got a relatively positive reception when it came out, but you still have plenty of naysayers out there. And now I feel like that movie is gospel for so many people.
Yeah. I do wonder how much time will need to pass before maybe we have a reappraisal of Evil Dead Rise as doing its own thing, because I'm the exact same as you, Tyrone. I went in being like, this is going to hit just as hard as 2013 because horror is like really open to doing very gory things and that kind of stuff. And I do think a lot of that movie works for me. But I think if you look at 2013 as the pinnacle of where Evil Dead could go in terms of like hardcore,
Yeah.
Evil Dead Rise doesn't quite hit that mark, but again, we may look at it very differently in just a couple of years after we've got a bit of distance.
I think it's good. It's not great. That's my thought of the matter.
Yeah. I felt like an old man. I was in the theater and I'm like, why are these kids going under the underground during earthquake aftershocks? What's
How
going
old are
on?
you, Tyrone?
Yeah. 35.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Shit, you're older than me. I'm
But here's the
34.
thing. Here's the thing. We can torpedo this conversation very quickly because Tyrone, I know that your favorite film of the year is like one that's fine for Trace and I, but it's not going to make our top 10 or probably even our top 15.
What is it?
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Talk to me.
Oh yeah, but both you and I know we are in the minority with that movie. Again, I think that movie is good. I don't think it's great.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh yeah, but that's how it's funny whenever, especially like when something that comes out that gets a lot of love or gets a lot of like talking about, and then you see it and you're like, oh, this was fine, or you absolutely love it. Like I loved The Nun too, but then I saw the reactions online.
I had fun with The Nun too. I think it's messy. But the thing that talked to me is though both Joe and I saw that before the hype, because we saw it when it premiered at Sundance. And I remember, granted, the hype started like when it premiered. So like, there was festival hype, but then it came out and everyone loved it. And it was one of those things where both Joe and I were like, what are we missing with this movie?
I will say though, it was really interesting because Trace, I can't remember if you saw it in the theater at Sundance.
I did. I saw a screener.
Okay, so yeah, I watched it first in the screener, and I, liked a lot of it and didn't like the back part of it, and then I ended up getting to catch it in a theater full of people, and it was so fascinating to watch the reactions from the audience. Like they were losing their minds at certain parts of the film. And I was just like, oh, that part didn't hit for me at all. Like I didn't have a reaction to it when I watched it, but then seeing it with a giant audience who were losing their shit, it's just like, oh, interesting. Okay. Because I'm not a huge person who believes, you have to go to the theater to appreciate a film. Like sometimes that's true, but I feel like honestly, most often, especially nowadays when filmmakers are making movies knowing we're watching them on our damn phones, it's like sometimes, but not always.
I think when it comes to that, I trust people more who say they saw it in a theater because I know then that they were paying attention to it. Whereas if they were watching it at home, every chance they were on their phone for a part of it, or they missed like a split second, like amazing part of the movie, So it's like, and not to say that not everyone pays attention during movies, but I know how I am sometimes if I have my phone anywhere near me when I'm watching something on my couch.
Oh yeah, it's been plenty of movies that I'm like, oh, this is trash, and then I rewatch it and actually paying attention. I'm like, oh, this was amazing. What am I like the Babadook? The first time I saw the Babadook, I'm like, what is this? Don't know what this is about. I regret my purchase. It's just gonna sit up there on the wall. But years later, I watch it with my fiance, and she breaks it down, and she's like, actually, this is about this, and that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is genius.
That's a really good example though, because that's that came out the same year I started writing for Bloody Disgusting. And but the talk of the town, that was an early entry in what some people call elevated horror, which Joe and I don't use that term because it's stupid and gatekeepy. But it was marketed so much as, oh my God, this is the scariest movie of the year. It was getting amazing reviews, which again, horror just doesn't really get that often, especially even 10 years ago. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to go see this really scary movie that critics love. And people watch it and they're like, this is boring, man.
This is more of a drama.
Yeah. And so I was a victim of that absolutely when I first saw it. And I think now though, in the 10 years since that came out and A24 has become this like horror juggernaut, I think a movie like that came out today, people be more accepting of it like up front than having to like have that sit down like you had, Tyrone, where it's like, well, this is what it's doing and this is why it's good and blah, 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 blah.
Oh yeah. Like I feel like I have to treat Smile like that again. Like I saw Smile in the theaters, then I saw it at home and I'm like, I still don't like this movie. But then I was talking with somebody and they were like, oh yeah, it's really good. It's and it's about grief and all this. And I'm like, okay, well, let me go watch it again. So I got to give it a third watch,
I don't know. You've watched it twice. To me, I'm like, if you watched a movie twice under different circumstances, or you're giving it another shot. In my mind, if you're still kind of a hard no, I think you've done your due diligence. Like, unless somebody really presses you to say, no, you need to give this another try. It's if you watch something once and it didn't work for you, and somebody really pitches you on it, I think that's when you say like, okay, well, maybe I'll give it another try. I'm trying
to think. I did that, like Deep Red. I watched Deep Red 3 times in a month because I was like, I have to like this movie. Everyone likes it. I don't like it.
It's just not for you.
When Freaky came out, I was very mid on Freaky, but everyone was loving it. So I watched that fucking movie 3 times in the span of 7 days.
Wow. That's dedication. That's
yeah.
Really,
and I still thought it was mid.
I was going to say, and you still don't like it.
I still think it's mid.
Nothing has been gained or lost.
Well, my time was lost, but yes.
Well, yes.
Well, listen. Watching movies back to back, especially multiple times during the week, is a lost art. Like, I feel like I used to do that back in the day with the VHS tapes. Like, I remember watching Godzilla over and over, Child's Play 2 over and over, and stuff like that.
Wait, Godzilla like the Emmerich one, or like
Matthew Broderick?
Yeah.
Hey, I don't think that movie's good overall, but I think it has good parts to it. Like, some of the action set pieces, like Emmer can do action. It's just that the movie is kind of nonsensical.
It's a really fun, stupid monster movie. It's just not a good Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Like, I rewatched that a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, you can tell this came out the year after The Lost World Jurassic Park, because Godzilla looks like a T-Rex, and they are stealing so many things from those Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Most definitely. Godzilla. Shout out to Godzilla. Was at -1, which is getting a lot of love right now from a lot of people. Yeah. I've definitely got to check it out. People say check it out in IMAX. It's like it's an experience, So definitely got to see. We got Brian. Brian Roy says, speaking of podcasts, what's your favorite ones, y'all? So do you guys have any favorite, podcasts that you want to shout out?
I'm actually embarrassed to say this. So during the pandemic, I started working from home, and I have been able to stay working from home ever since. And my commute was my podcasting time. So as a podcaster, very rarely, if ever, listen to podcasts unless I'm preparing for a guest on ours.
He's like a writer who doesn't write. Terrible.
No, I understand.
I mean, yeah, it's a time commitment, right? So I know a bunch of people who are big into audiobooks and therefore less so in podcasts, because it's like you're going to choose one lane and stick to it. I have my rotation. It kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I'm looking for laughs, I'll probably go for like Girl That's Scary or Kill by Kill. If I want something a little meaty, sometimes I'll dip into like, if I have a doctor's appointment, I will put on Podmortem, because it's like, if I'm stuck in a waiting room for 3 hours, I can listen to an entire film. I listened to their Deep Blue Sea episode the last time I had a doctor's appointment, and I was like, I'm still halfway through this episode, and I just got called after like 2 hours. So that was like a really great way to kill a boring amount of time. I was like, these 3 will keep me company. So
did they like Deep Blue Sea?
Oh yeah, they love it.
Okay, good. Who doesn't like Deep Blue Sea, really?
Oh yeah,
people
Deep Blue
Sea.
Sea.
Like fun.
Deep Blue Sea was just, it was a time, and it's still a time. Even watching it now, it's still a time.
I feel like I'm waiting for that Rennie Harlan to come back, though. Like, I'm so trepidatious about the Strangers trilogy that we've got coming out next year, because I'm like, I want him to bring that sense of fun and atmosphere that I feel like I haven't seen from him in so many years.
That's the thing, right? Because when you think of Rennie Harlan, you're like, oh my god, like The Long Kiss Goodnight, Deep Blue Sea, Cliffhanger, and you're like, wait, all those movies were in the 90s. What has he done since the year 2000? And the answer is Mindhunters is awesome. Mindhunters is so good.
Douglas giving us nothing. He's like, no, I'm not talking about those movies.
Oh, the screen was the screen was freezing. I was just trying to stay focused.
No, Mindhunters is a really fun, cheesy Agatha Christie tale with a really shitty climax. Like that is what Mindhunter is. The killer reveal in that movie sucks, but it's like, oh, like FBI profilers, like they're all locked on an island, and one of them's a killer, and it's Val Kilmer hamming it up, and that woman from Cold Case who's the lead for some reason. Like it's just
and she's
Christian
boring.
Slater.
Christian Slater and LL Cool J's in it too, right?
Paula Velasquez, the I think it's Paula
from The Mummy, right?
From The Mummy, yeah, Anaxuna Moon. God, fun movie, a really good whodunit.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I like a good, whodunit. Clue. Shout out to Clue, and
I mean, that's like the epitome of like horror comedy whodunits right there.
Oh yeah, and also
one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that and Airplane Chef's Kiss.
That's like if you're going on a date with someone or you're starting a relationship with someone, like, look, you cannot like movies I like. That's a thing. But like Clue is one of those movies where if I show it to you and you don't think it's funny, we're not really going to have a future.
It's a deal breaker.
Like, you cannot like it. You're not going to date me and not like it.
No, I understand that. I definitely understand that. Like, I feel that way about Batman. If we're going out, and luckily my fiance, she's a huge Batman fan as well. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna I think the first date actually was the first time she came over, we were watching Batman. We were watching something Batman.
Like the first one, like the Tim Burton movie?
Yeah, no. That's my follow-up. It's like, which Batman?
Which Batman?
All Batman.
When she first came over, we saw the Flashpoint, like the animated movie, and then we saw the Killing Joke. We went to the theaters to see the Killing Joke.
Oh, I saw that in theaters too.
I've heard troubling things about that because obviously the Killing Joke is one of the best Batman stories ever. But then I heard that isn't that one like kind of rapey, like the animated
version? It's not rapey. It's just that Batman and Batgirl do fuck, and it's weird. Like it's very weird because the story of the Killing Joke is not that long, so it doesn't fill a feature length. So they basically adapt the Killing Joke into the second half of the movie, and the first half is this Batman Batgirl thing that leads into the Killing Joke, and it's just like it's weird,
right?
Okay, it's something I had to get used to because I feel like when that came out, we started to see like a trend of more sexuality being more in your face as far as like the Batman, Batman characters. Now we've got Harley Quinn, the show where they've just it's just
you like it, right? Like it's so fucking funny.
It's funny, yeah, it's definitely funny,
But no, because we are seeing a lot more R-rated animated Batman media, not just Harley Quinn, but even the movies. Like I think the two Long Halloween movies got the R rating as well. And that is a pretty one-to-one adaptation of the story until they really fuck up something in the ending, in my opinion. But they like to do that. Like the Hush movie also changes the identity of Hush, and it's fucking stupid. Welcome to
I think that it's a trend. Yeah, Batman podcast, but it's definitely a trend of them changing like the identities and stuff now. The multiverses, the whole like, okay, I'm because I just beat Spider-Man, and they switched the identity of Venom again, and I'm like,
oh really?
This is wild, So
do you think they're doing that just because they know that their intended audience already knows all that, so they're trying to keep it fresh and exciting for them, or is it just like we want to do something, so we're going to change this?
A little column A, a little column B.
Yeah, a little. I feel like a little bit of both, but I also feel like they're giving the writers a little bit more freedom to put more themes into it, because I feel like this Spider-Man 2 game, like the writing in there, I'm like, holy shit, like what are you guys like who
I really like it.
I was gonna say I can't read which way you two are going.
I love it. I loved it, but I was just like holy shit, like how are you it was wild.
I think the I both love and hate what the concept of the multiverse has done for Hollywood and even TV shows, because on the positive side, it lets writers have carte blanche to kind of write whatever stories they want,
literally branch into different places and give characters a second try if they didn't work the first time and so on.
But any sort of stakes are then removed from so much of your storytelling, because it's like, oh, we can kill this person off. It means nothing because we'll just bring another version of them in that's from the exact, like from a universe that's almost the same, but there's like one minor difference. So it's like basically the same character. That's the issue I have with the multiverse, like as a thing right now.
It's the same Venom. It's just he comes from a world where pigeons can talk.
Yeah. Oh, Rick and Morty does a really good joke about this, because the cast members of Rick and Morty often die a lot, except for the main Rick, and so they have to go to different universes that are safe for them. But oh my god, I was going somewhere with that and I totally forgot. Oh no, because they go to a world where it's like, oh, it's the exact same world as ours, except they pronounce Parmesan like Parmesan, and then they all go, ah!
We can't stay here.
But no, like 2 seasons later, someone says Parmesan, and you're like, oh right, we're in this other universe.
So speaking of multiverses, like, how do you guys feel about the Halloween multiverse? You know, and how that's popping off.
Oh my!
I would care about it if it was good. I think both Joe and I are on the same page, where it's like we were both like into 2018 a bit. Like we didn't love it, but like we liked it. And then Kills just killed that for us.
Yeah.
And
I like the gore in Kills, but apart from that, I was just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, but like we both liked Halloween Ends more than Halloween Kills. I don't think either one of us would call Halloween Ends a good movie.
No.
But we appreciated the big swings it was taking, whereas Halloween Kills, in our humble opinion, was a nonsensical, stupid mess.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Halloween franchise is like up and down, you know, and something it's inevitable to like a bad movie, you know, because I feel like I love I'll throw on Halloween Resurrection, you know, and have some fun with it.
That's great. That's great.
I mean, not to say it's being reappraised, but the number of people who now feel comfortable expressing their love and affection for Halloween Resurrection is like, you know what? I'm just going to throw this on, and I'm not going to apologize for it because I enjoy it. I'm not going to pretend it's a good movie, but I have a good time. And I think that there's a really important place for those kinds of movies too. As long as you kind of acknowledge, yeah, like I'm not going to die on the hill saying it's a great movie, but do I like it? Do I enjoy it? Yes.
I think that's what the like button, like the little heart icon in Letterboxd, is meant to be, where it's like, oh, I'm giving this movie a 2-star rating, but I like it, so therefore I heart it. I don't operate that way. If I like a movie, it's at least a 3-star movie. Whether like quality notwithstanding, it's a 3-star movie at least.
Right. Yeah. I think I only like movies that I would consider like in my top 5 or top 10.
I like anything that's 4 stars or higher, but then after like 2 years of doing that, I was like, well, what's the point of this? Because I can always just look for my 4 stars or higher film. So what's different between the things that I liked and that? I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm doing it right, is what you're
saying. No, I'm doing it wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the type that when I go on Letterboxd, like I go off emotion. Like if I feel if it evokes some sort of emotion out of me, I'm like, okay. 5 stars, you know, like I know it was controversial, but Skinamarink, 5 stars for me, you know, especially.
I think that's totally fair though. I think yes, absolutely.
I think as long as you're consistent, right? So if somebody looked, they would see, okay, Skinamarink 5 stars, something else also 5 stars. Like that's giving me insight to how you operate and what kind of movies you're gravitating to. I mean, I'm one of those assholes who's like, I have different criteria if a movie is falling into this kind of category versus this. So like the way I rate horror movies is completely different to the way that I would rate a drama. Because horror movies, you've got a really big range, and sometimes you need all of the stars so that you can express the finite details.
It's interesting though, because I use this example a lot where I'm like, you know, it's easy to say I liked or I didn't like this movie because it was boring or it was entertaining or it made me feel something. But here's the thing though. When you have to write 800 or 1,000 words about why you are giving this movie a 5-star rating, that forces your brain to think about a lot of different things. Like I have watched a movie at a festival and been like, ugh, 2 stars. And then as I was writing my review, I was like, oh, well, that was really good. That was really good. So I bumped it up to a 3 or a 3.5. Or I've had a movie that I was like, I really like that. And then the more I wrote about it, the more I found flaws that I was like, oh, this actually isn't as good as I thought it was when I walked out of the theater.
But I'm sure, Tyrone, you probably experience this too, right? Like when you're interviewing people or when you're having conversations, because you do a ton of like listicle style, people come in with your top recommendations on this subgenre or this category or something. And I find even compiling those and listening to other people's rationales, it does make me reconsider like, why does this movie work for other people if it didn't sometimes work for me? And that can press me to start being either more generous or more critical of things when I'm rating future movies down the line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like if I'm talking to someone and they're like, oh, I really love this movie, and they express like their passion for it and just like the reason why, I'm like, okay, sometimes I'll be like, okay, why did I judge this movie in the way that I judged it? And are my feelings still valid towards this film, or should I give it, another shot? Like, 'cause I think I felt that way about what was that movie that I had to go back and I was like, this is amazing. Dead Silence. Dead Silence.
Oh,
Dead Silence.
Yeah.
That's a silly movie.
Yeah, I saw Dead Silence in the theaters, and I was just like, this is not for me, James Wan. This is not for me. And then years later, I'm doing the interviews and people are like going up for Dead Silence. They're like, oh, this is great.
Okay,
this is great.
But that's new though, because no one liked Dead Silence when it came out, and no one saw Dead Silence when it came out. Like
I did.
I saw it in the theater on a date. I remember my boyfriend at the time being like, "The fuck was that?" But like even James Wan didn't like Dead Silence. Like he and Lee Winnell were forced to make that movie after Saw because they had it in their contract to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But now people are liking it, and like I think that's great. I like Dead Silence. I think it's a really fun, cheesy movie. I don't know. I mean, like, and there's a lot of style in there, but like, people liking that is a very modern thing. It was not there in 2007.
But I mean, maybe this is the other way that the pandemic has changed us. I felt like because we all had a bunch more time to just kind of sit around at home and watch or reappraise things, I feel like since around 2017, 2018, we've started to see a lot more films go through that cycle of maybe it's not good, but I do enjoy it and I'm going to stop apologizing for it. Like we've also seemingly struck guilty pleasure as a term out of our vocabulary, where it's like, that makes it sound like I'm apologizing for it. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I literally saw someone tweet today, like, we're getting rid of the term guilty pleasure. And I was like, I thought we did that 5 years ago. Like,
yeah, like,
move on.
We did that already, babies. Now it's about putting back in sex and child murder into our movies. That's where we're at.
Or media literacy, man. Like, I swear to God. Like, depiction does not equal endorsement, everyone.
Yeah.
That one I don't think is going to go away. We're going to have to keep educating people about that.
I know.
Every generation, every decade, it's always something new that they try and strip away from the art. We got Michael. He says, "What is a movie that is considered bad but you will continue to defend?" Oh, that's a good question, Michael. That's a good question.
That's a good one.
You know what? Here, wait. Give me a second because I'm going to pull up my. This is a good Letterboxd tool, actually. If you're a patron of Letterboxd, they will tell you what movies you have rated a lot higher than the general average of other moviegoers. So let's see. I got Deep Blue Sea, Anaconda, Zombievers.
There's the hill that Trace will die on is Zombievers.
But Zombievers, though, isn't considered a bad movie by people that have actually seen Zombievers. Zombievers is considered a bad movie by people that haven't seen it because they write it off as stupid schlock, and it's actually much smarter than that. So, like, a legitimate, like, Joe, I mean, come on, yours is Bloodline. It's Hellraiser Bloodline.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right, it is.
But like a movie that I guess I love that I consider legitimately bad. All right. Oh, considered.
Halloween Ends is one of those where it's like this is a legitimately bad movie, but
I want to give a
also
better answer than that.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I get that. Legitimately bad. Oh, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
Yeah,
I will defend that movie until the cows come home. I think it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And whether the comedy is intentional or not is up to you, the viewer, to decide. I think it's intentional for the most part. But that movie gets way too much hate, and it's my third favorite in the franchise.
Oh, okay, okay. I respect it. I respect it. You know, I think I would probably throw in like a Darkness Falls. Like I don't think it's the best movie out there,
Oh,
but
Oh,
I really enjoy it. You know.
Darkness Falls has an amazing like prologue. Like the prologue of that movie is so fucking good. That sets up a much better movie than what you actually get.
so that's an interesting question then. How many films can be rescued by having a good either like ending or beginning or like one amazing character, but then the rest of it is just like covered in shit?
Well, but that's why I get so mad when people like talk about their opinion on a movie. Like, I turned it off. I didn't even finish it, and I was like, "Fuck
Oh,
you!
then no, you
Your
get to say
opinion's not
nothing.
valid." Because here's the thing: there is if you're watching a movie and you're like, "This is a 1-star film," it very well may still be a 1-star film for you by the time the credits roll. However,
Mhm.
I have seen plenty of movies where the events of the final 2 minutes have bumped it up a whole star for me, and so
Mhm.
I I don't
Wild
think.
Things.
Yeah, Wild Things is amazing. But like to my knowledge, I don't think I've never walked out of a movie for sure. And I don't think I've ever turned off a movie. Like I will always finish it so I can at least give it like my full honest opinion and say, yeah, I saw the whole fucking thing. It was a piece of shit. Not I saw half the movie. I mean, you can say that. You can say I watched half this movie. Cool. You can say then the first half of that movie is a piece of shit. You can't say the movie is a piece of shit because you didn't see the movie.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that. I feel that. Like I'm guilty of especially like lately, like especially because there's so many people recommend so many movies to
Mm-hmm.
you, especially like when you're interviewing people and stuff like that. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I'll give it the 20-30 minutes, and I'm like, okay, if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm about halfway and I'm still
Not
not
vibing.
even yeah, not vibing or caring what the fuck is going on, I'm like, okay, let me cut this off,
Yeah, but that's also because there's so much content nowadays, right? Like we
Yeah.
didn't have this issue 30 years ago. We had
No.
things like there was a finite amount of things available to us. Now, every Friday, I think 30 movies come out.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Television originals, streaming all these damn streaming apps, television shows, and then the
Mhm.
movies. And it's just like, holy shit, I'm spending, $100 on media, in a week, with all these streaming services and damn movie tickets. It's like you can't
Yeah.
you can't keep up.
We had a patron ask us recently, Joe. They were like, I gotta know, how many streaming services do y'all subscribe to? And I was like, well,
Mhm.
and I did the
Yeah, you start
list.
to do the list, you're like, "Oh god. Oh
Yeah.
god. This is why I'm poor."
And I just cut Disney Plus because I've had Disney Plus for 2 years and I think I've opened it twice. So I'm like,
Mm,
nope, cutting that cord.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel
I
like
have a
some
friend.
apps. I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like some apps are like, your Planet Fitness membership. Like you keep it in the corner somewhere, but you're not really
Yeah.
Never
you're
got
not
I
really
never used
going.
it.
I need to get into the habit of I don't need to have Apple TV Plus all year, but I do watch things on Apple TV Plus. But I need to get in the habit of, okay, I'm gonna like renew it when the show that I'm watching is airing and then cancel after that. I'm so bad about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I have a friend who I think has found this kind of genius method where she will subscribe to one at a time and she will binge everything that she's interested in during that like month or however
Mhm.
long she wants to do it for. And then she cancels and moves to the next one. So
Another
it's like,
streaming
okay,
service.
I'm going to do Hulu this month, watch all the things I want to watch at the end of the month. If I still have more, maybe I re up it. But if not, I close down and then I move to the next one and do the same thing. So it's like you're always guaranteed to have a bunch of things that you want to watch, but you're only paying for one streamer or one service at a time.
That's smart. That's a lot of maintenance in my
It
brain.
is. It's a lot of strategy too. You got to maintain like, okay, if something leaves, like I'm constantly thinking of Shutter, where bless Shutter, they've kept their costs low. They've got a lot of great content, but also those motherfucker titles come off every month where you're just
Yeah.
like, I thought it was there, now it's not there anymore.
Man, I will say though, but so I have Shutter, but it's not an app that I visit a lot. Like I watch Blade Brothers Dracula, but like a lot of their original content I've seen at like festivals or other things like that. But even
Mhm.
for this end of year push that we're doing to like I'm trying to say, oh, could I add anything to my top 10? So many of the movies that I wanted to see but just didn't make this year, they're all
Yeah,
on Shutter.
yeah. Shutter is doing the Lord's work, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Shudder's the shit. It's so many movies, you know, that especially like the independent, you know, side, you know, that the Shudder, you
Yeah.
know, it introduced me
Well,
to what's it, Hell House LLC, you know, that
oh my god.
Yes. Yes.
Talk about a fun fucking franchise.
With a little bit of ups and downs along the way.
Oh, I mean,
yes,
there is one major down. It's the third one, but like,
yes.
whatever, it's fine. I know people hate the second one, but I like the second one. So
Oh, I
whatever.
love the second one. I love the second.
It's, I,
It's got fun stuff.
Joe's heard me say this many
So many
times.
times.
The second one is a worse movie than the first one, but I think it has better scares than the first one and more scares.
I agree because I feel like, you know, for me personally, I felt like the second one is more rewatchable for me than this first one.
Well,
You know, the
because the scares are spread out, whereas in the first one, they're like the scares
Till
build.
the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the
And
fourth
yes,
one was amazing.
Bobby, that most recent one is so good.
Yes. Yes. Super good. Shout out to the clowns.
Wait, have you ever seen sorry, I'm like branching off. Have you ever seen it's called Horror in the High Desert, Tyrone?
No, Horror in the High Desert.
This is something that was shown to me by my husband. Actually, I'd never heard of this. It's a queer directed, queer written, queer created franchise. There are two of these movies, and one of the third one will come out next year. But they're like these mockumentary type movies where it's like, oh, like, you know, we're following these people as they go into like this like desert area, and then there's just things that happen in them, and it is the like that and Hell House I put is like kind of birds of a feather because they're both movies that they're both franchises that I think that people will either like or not like based on their affinity for found footage, but they both have such effective scares that all their other quality aside, I kind of don't care because I walk out being like that scare. I watched the second Horror in the High Desert like this, like no joke, like this.
Wow. Well, it did its job, you know.
Exactly. And like they're solid movies. They're not like 5-star movies, but they're so like they're scarier than any mainstream film that I've seen in the past 5 years.
Oh yeah.
I guess that also it kind of begs the question of, well, what are you trying to get out of certain movies? Like for me, that's sometimes my struggle with fan footage is like the low budget can be a bit of a barrier. I sometimes find that they are just too reliant on the same techniques. Like they're not willing to experiment with the form, which I think is essential when you don't have the money.
Yeah.
But also, you know, usually the narratives are a little bit slight, not always the best acting and that kind of stuff. But if you're going into it being like, scare me, like I turn out all the lights, I watch this movie and I'm watching it like this.
Well, that's the thing though, you know, like I mean, look, I find something like I mean, like what's an A20? I think Hereditary is a very scary movie. However, if someone says, "Hey, Trace, what's a really scary movie?" That's not going to be my first recommendation because a movie like Hereditary, and to a lesser extent, something like The Babadook, is more of an acquired taste of scares because again, those are not the same types of scares you would get from something like Hell House LLC or like Horror in the High Desert. So when asking for scares, I'm like, I'll recommend something like that over something like Hereditary, even though I think Hereditary is a better movie than any of those other films.
There we go. Right. It's that definition of like, well, what makes a good movie? Because if you're saying what's the best scary movie, it may be very different than like, oh, what's like a really great horror film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything like different things are going to like tap different emotions in people. Like for me, because of stuff like Are You Afraid of the Dark, you know, back in the day, I have an inherent fear of old people, you know, because it was always it was always somebody. It was the old people were always the evildoers and like Are You Afraid of the Dark or whatever. So when I saw Hereditary and it was just a bunch of naked old people, you know, and the
oh my god, have you seen Shyamalan's The Visit?
Yeah.
You should really watch that. I love that.
I loved it. Yes.
Really good movie.
I still gotta check out that Spanish one. There's a new one that just came out from Spain called The Elderly, where it's like basically all the old people start killing people in an apartment building, and I'm like, I need to check that shit out.
But that's the thing too, where it comes in like, okay, if someone says, "Oh, what's a really scary movie?" I'm like, well, That's a really hard question. It's like, what's a really funny movie?
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Everyone has different ideas about what they think is funny. And so again, if someone says what's a funny movie, I'm not going to say go watch a John Waters movie from the 70s because they might find that offensive and not funny. Same with scary. Like, again, I know plenty of people that find The Babadook or Hereditary boring. So it's like, okay, well, the horror, or it follows. So the horror from those movies comes from like the anxiety for me that it instills in me, but it's not a quote unquote typical scare. You know, it's not the
scare factory.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, what do you find scary? My fucking brother-in-law would do the same thing where he'd be like, what's a scary movie? And I showed him like 3 movies that I thought were genuinely scary. And he was like, well, no, those are disturbing. They're not scary. And I was like, what the fuck is the difference? And he couldn't explain it to me. He was like, well, like this. I know. And I was like, dude, like, you're killing me. Like, because I felt like he was trying to be an edgelord with like, I didn't find that scary. But then he kept asking me like he was egging me on. And I was like, no, like, I learned that he does not like it when bad things happen to children. So I'm compiling a list of movies where bad things happen to children because he has a kid, and so he finds that very scary.
Don't show him when evil lurks.
I was going to say like top of the list for this year. Right?
I mean, like I'm looking like the worst child things. Like just I want to show him the children. Actually, that'd be really
good.
Oh,
I mean, Trace, you know I have a letterbox list where children die in horror movies, right?
I do.
I gotta keep that thing updated. There's been a rash of it this year.
We're seeing a lot more kid deaths nowadays.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Me too.
Fuck them kids. Let's get it. Let's get it. You know.
Yeah.
We had Michael. He says, "Yes, Tyrone, you loved the Howling 2 and Troll 2."
So that question was really for you, Tyrone, is what we're saying. Michael was like, "I want to hear you say it out loud on the air, recorded for posterity."
I need to watch Howling 2 though. I've never seen Howling 2.
Yeah, Howling 2. I stayed away from it for a while, but I checked it out and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, you know. I rewatched the original Howling, and then I was like, this was great, but there was that scene that just took me out of the movie where it was like the animation just took me out of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Do not tell me it's the file cabinet scene, because the file cabinet seems amazing.
Oh no, not the file cabinet. The one, I think the one where they're at the they're around the fire pit, you know, and then they're
they fuck.
Yeah, and then the whole animation shit. I'm like, you could have just kept that shit out if you didn't have the money.
Man, you know, The Howling isn't a movie I talk about a lot because it just didn't werewolf movies aren't really my thing. But that was one of those movies that I Netflixed when I was in high school because I was making my way through like classic horror films, and I'll never forget being like, I think we just saw dick in this movie. Like they're flat out fucking next to this campfire.
Oh yeah,
I remember thinking that was one of the first times I saw like a peep show in and I to me that's the most effective scene because I find it so terrifying, just like what you're seeing and what you're not seeing and how we're using the projected image. Like, but also I'm, you know, Trace, I'm a sucker for things that happen where it's like there's film being shown in a film.
Oh yeah.
Like if we're in a movie theater, if we're projecting something and there's something scary happening, I'm just like, but that's what I'm doing right now.
But so like it has that Joe Dante touch, like that file, that file cabinet scene is like a Looney Tunes thing where she's like pulling the files out, and then all of a sudden it's Scooby Doo where she just hands it to the werewolf, and so silly. It's silly, but then it's really fucking scary.
I think that's why people prioritize and what is it, an American in London? There we go. In Paris.
Paris is fun.
I mean, it's fun, but it's not
it's
good.
Yes,
but I feel like people prioritize London because they're like, no, this is serious. Like we're doing serious things. We've got commentary. But then you get to Howling, and Howling's like the creature effects are pretty on par, like in terms of goodness. But then that story is a bit wackadoodle. So they're like, well, the Howling is the weird one.
That's interesting. I would actually say American Werewolf in London has more horror comedy than the Howling does.
It does, but people forget about it because they always fixate on the transformation sequence.
Yeah, that's true. And the ending is a real downer.
Yeah, I feel like the first time I saw American Werewolf, like I saw American Werewolf in Paris first.
And of course you did. Child of the 90s.
Yes, I was gonna say we're all the same age, right? So that's the order because that's the one that came out in theaters.
Yeah, that was 97, I think, which great Great
And
year.
it left such an effect on me that I actually went to Paris and I was scared to go to the clubs because I'm like, you're not gonna lock
Who am
me
I
in
picking
here,
up?
motherfuckers. You're not gonna lock me in here.
Is
You
it
know.
Frank? Who is it in Paris? Is it Franca Potente or is it
It's
Julie
Julie
Delpy?
Delpy.
Wait, so she's like pulling out American Werewolf in Paris and Before Sunrise in the same like 3-year period.
Yep. And she's genre. She can do it all.
Do it all. Do it all.
But I just remember Paris being like so fun, and it had certain elements, but it was like, for me it was like just pure fun and like camp. But then I go to something like American Werewolf in London and I'm watching, I'm like, oh, we're in the class, seriousness. But also I saw the comedic elements and I'm like, okay, but then I rewatch it, like I think it was a couple months ago, I rewatched it. And I'm like, oh shit, this is depressing as fuck. It's from my latest viewing.
It's such a tricky tightrope between horror and comedy, and so I mean, obviously, the best horror comedies like walk that tightrope very well. I feel like nowadays, though, it's harder. I don't know if I want to like jump into this pool yet, but like I think it's more difficult for people with horror. In general, horror comedy is a very tough sell to market because you have horror people that want their horror, but you have non-horror fans that want to go see the comedy and they're turned off by the gore and blah 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 blah. But I also think we're kind of living in an age where a lot of the content of genre films, which is upsetting, it's tricky to throw comedy into that because you don't want to offend anyone, and that's really easy to do today.
I think what we often end up with is more comedy horrors. And I know that seems like a semantic thing, but it's films that put the comedy first and then they have like either scary or gory moments. Like even something which is really straddling a lot of the things that we've been talking about, something like Bodies, 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 right?
Yeah.
It's like I often felt like the comedy was coming first before the whodunit. And then also there was like, the prestige of the A24 and that film looks fucking great.
It depends, right? Like I think Slither is a really good example of a horror comedy that it's not offensive, but it's so gooey that like I'll never forget taking my sister and my then boyfriend to see Slither. We were one of the 5 people that saw that movie in theaters because it flopped like a motherfucker. And they were so mad because it was so gross to them that they didn't find it funny. Or look at something like Freeway, which I would absolutely call like a dark comedy, but is filled with very offensive things that we are laughing at or with or about, and that might turn people off.
Yeah. I mean, it gets a little tricky, like when you're adding comedic elements, especially like nowadays, because a lot of the shit that we used to laugh at like 10, 20 years ago, like I'm throwing like Wayne's Brothers or whatever, and I'm like, what the fuck were you guys? What were you guys doing?
We did that when we covered Scary Movie 2, and this was like 3 years ago. But I remember being like, "Wow, this is really offensive. This is really offensive." But it's like, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Poor Evotrace. She was there like, I like this movie. It's really fun. And Tristan and I were like, we have to talk about all the problematic stuff. And she was like, fuck you.
But it's just funny.
I don't think she's ever talked to us again. I think it must have been a terrible experience for her.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times, I'll speak for myself personally, where I'm like, I feel like maybe I was too hard because like we were living in an age, we are living in an age, but like we're just living in a time right now where there's a lot of pushback against certain content in films. And I think for a while, I especially was very much like, I need to like follow that.
They're on the side of being like, oh, this is bad. I need to condone.
Yeah. And now that I've kind of, my pendulum has like swung in the exact opposite direction. I'm like, no, like give me those really fucked up, like again, I mean, this isn't horror, but like May December came out, which is a movie, a dramedy, heavier on the drama, that deals with very difficult subject matter like child abuse, like child rape, and there are funny parts in it, though I wouldn't call it a comedy. But it's interesting seeing like the reaction to that film from different age groups of people who maybe don't understand what the movie is trying to do.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
This is the problem with all of us, right? We're hitting an age where we are aging out of like a whole sector or like a whole demographic. So, I refuse to get TikTok in part because I can't spare the time and I don't want to learn it, even though I think some of the content sounds fascinating. But then you hear about like, oh, well, like the Scream fans are having like they're tearing things down over what's going on with I'm not opening up.
I was gonna say, are you?
No, I'm not because I actually don't want to have that conversation because I don't think any of us need to. But just like in general, like younger Scream fans, like Trace and I practically got torn apart when we were very critical of that third season of the TV show that nobody fucking cared about, except apparently a whole bunch of people were just like, this is great. We love it. Fuck you guys. You don't understand. It's like, oh, okay. In some ways, I think that's really interesting because you're like, oh, not only is this not for me, it's maybe not for my age demographic anime.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't a good season of television, objectively speaking. Like, it was just bad. But he's right, though. I mean, like, and I think me personally, I'm just kind of like, yeah, you're right. I'm aging out of this demographic where I'm like, I don't know if I feel my opinions or like how I'm feeling about movies and entertainment, the media I consume changing, but I'm definitely experiencing more of a I don't give a fuck like mindset, like an old cantankerous man that's like, I like what I like.
Don't tell me not to like something.
Yeah, and don't tell me to like something that I don't like.
Yes,
yes. Tyrone, have you seen something like in the last year where you were just like, oh, it's not just like a matter of taste where you're on the opposite end of something, but you're just like, oh, this movie has like really wild, passionate defenders, and that's not me and my friends?
You know what? I mean, I felt like I really didn't see the big deal about like Cocaine Bear. Like I went and saw Cocaine Bear, and I was just like, this is I don't know. I felt like I was too old for the comedy, to be honest. For the
Joe
comedy.
was in that same boat as you. That was a movie where it was wilder than I was expecting it to be because I was expecting more of a studio rein in on that, but it wasn't as wild as I wanted it to be. So it was a middle ground. I liked it, but it wasn't like amazing, you know?
Yeah. But the theater I was in, they loved it. I was shocked, because at that time, I think it was around the time when I had saw Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey or whatever.
Okay, like earlier this year, January, February, right?
Joe and I have been. So, what was your opinion on that? Because here's the funny thing: everyone I talk to hates that movie. My husband, though, really liked it, and I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was an okay film. I went in, thinking, okay, this is going to be a bad film. It's Winnie the Pooh slasher.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's get it. And I watch it. And I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. It had some nice elements. Some elements didn't care for, but it had some really great elements to it. But I took my girl and she loved it. She to this, I think it's in her top, of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we get a sequel. Like I think it made enough money to get a sequel, but
we are getting a sequel.
Coming in February, Trace. Yeah. We talked about that.
Wait, I'm sorry. It's coming. Oh, sorry. In my mind, I was thinking Cocaine. Sorry, I was thinking Cocaine Bear. No, yeah, I know that's getting a sequel. Yeah, which again, we'll watch it. We'll watch it. I just, yeah.
We need a crossover: Blood and Honey and Cocaine Bear. That's what we need.
Oh my god, Blood and Honey and cocaine.
There's already a bear in both movies, so there you go.
Truly, yeah.
Exactly. We got JC. Thanks for stopping by. Yes, Hell House LLC. Part 3 is a dip, but part 4 brings it. Yes. we got Dice rolling in the building. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, I've been listening to you guys for over a year now. Always entertaining. Also, thanks very much for covering Phantom of the Paradise. Yes.
Oh wow, you went all the way to that back catalog. I think was that our first year, Joe?
Maybe second.
Second.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, it's
yeah.
fun.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we try to cover at least one musical each year. Whether or not we're always successful, I'm not sure, but we try.
Yes. Well, we have to cover Repo eventually because someone's like, we've gotten like 3 requests about that in the past month.
I mean, there's a movie that I think is highly entertaining, but is not good.
Yep, I will agree with that. I don't think it's a good movie, but I like it.
Well, what about speaking of musicals? Like, what did you guys think of Anna and the Apocalypse? Did you check that out?
Funnily enough, we
Go for it.
Whatever. We'll have an episode on it this month.
Awesome.
No, I really like Anna and the Apocalypse. I have grabs. I'm not as enamored with it as the general horror populace seems to be. I like it a lot. I don't
Yeah.
like love it. And I think Joe, you might be in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I admire what it's doing on what is obviously not a huge budget, but I think it's hella ambitious and I think it's a lot of fun. You know, I like it better when it's still in the fun first half and the songs are a little bit more poppy. And then I have issues with the villain, but I will go into that in depth.
In the episode.
Yes.
I think when it comes to horror musicals, honestly, like the high bar, the peak, the magnum opus is still that musical episode of Buffy. Like I have yet to see a movie musical of a horror film that has matched that episode. This 40, no, it's longer. It's like a 50-minute episode in terms of quality.
Mhm.
And I say that as someone who likes but doesn't love Rocky Horror Picture Show. Sorry, it's fine. I actually like the sequel, Shock Treatment, more than I like Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's my hot take of the day.
There we go. That's the one that'll get you burned.
Hey, Shock Treatment is like really good though, and Jessica Harper swaps in for Susan Sarandon as Janet, and she is amazing. Like her singing voice. Oh,
well, as we just said, Phantom of the Paradise.
Yes, exactly.
You know what she's capable of. Yeah, I feel like only certain people know about Shock Treatment. Like I haven't seen it, but I obviously know that it has existed for a very long time.
It's just it's weird because it takes place like in a TV studio, but it's very bizarre and weird, and I found it more palatable than Rocky Horror. But I do think it may come at the expense of the queerness of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, have you guys seen the Evil Dead the musical?
Hell yeah!
That
one, I got that shit on CD.
Were you in the splatter? Were you in the splatter zone? Did you get? Oh yes.
Joe, have you seen this on stage?
I've never seen it live. I've watched there's a YouTube recording that you can watch, and I have friends who acted in it. It was here for a little while, but I didn't manage to see it. Like, I honestly, I think I was going to go and see it the year of the pandemic, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm just not going to have like random fluids thrown on me in public right now.
It was touring through back when I lived in Austin. It was touring through there. You know, like it was like a touring community theater production, so it wasn't in like a big like theater. It was like in a smaller one,
right?
But I was in that splatter zone, and I did wear a goddamn poncho, and the blood they used was basically Kool-Aid, and so when I got out, like my arms were just so sticky. Like I sat through the whole back half of that musical just like not trying to touch anything around me because sticky, I don't do sticky, it just feels gross. But also that's a musical, like maybe it'll be a streamer, I guess, but like I would love to see a movie musical adaptation of the Evil Dead musical. Like that would be so fucking fun.
Hell yeah.
If people are looking for another, like, not a deep bench, but like a fun, maybe slightly off-kilter recommendation, Trey Stone and Matt Parker did a musical called Cannibal. And it's very, like, it's rude because it's, you know, about the past where people, like, turned into cannibals because they got, like, snowed in during an avalanche season. But it's fun. Like, you can watch that one on YouTube as well. The quality is terrible, but the songs are funny.
Yes.
I've actually never seen that one.
Well,
it's on Peacock.
Oh my god, really?
It's on Peacock.
Okay.
Peacock coming through.
I would say Peacock is the other one. Like, we praise Shudder. I would say Peacock is kind of the other one if you're looking for a good rotating batch of, like, we're going to keep you fed with various different types of horror media.
Yeah, it's just got one of the worst interfaces of any of these streaming apps.
Oh, damn. Well, I'm glad you wore a poncho. Like I wore a poncho the second time because I saw.
Did they not give you a poncho?
Didn't wear a poncho the first time?
No, they gave us a poncho.
No, they gave me a poncho because it was a smaller production in Pennsylvania, and I saw it and they passed out ponchos. But when the first time I saw it in Vegas, and it was a higher production value, and you know everybody's getting dressed up. And I was wearing something that I shouldn't have been wearing for this show.
So you got it ruined, I'm assuming?
Yeah, pretty much got it ruined. And also I guess they heated up that red whatever they were spraying at us, so they heated up the water, but they kept the air blasting, so it was just like,
Oh, so you froze then.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that
But in Vegas, though, I mean,
sucks.
how many people can say they saw Evil Dead the musical in Vegas?
yeah,
That is
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It was dope. They got a lot of nice shows out there. A lot of nice shows out there. What's his name? Chris
Chris Angel?
Mind Freak, Chris Angel. Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Angel. Yeah, the Mind Freak. Saw him out there as well.
Trace has no idea who we're talking about right now.
He's like a magician, right?
He's a
Chris
magician.
Angel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I only know about him because of South Park, actually.
Yeah, it was an era of that, like Chris Angel and then Ghost Hunters. That was my Friday night. At one point.
There we go.
So now, my next question for you guys would be: do you have a favorite subgenre? Of the.
We're laughing because we have the same favorites. I'll do slashers
There we
and
go. Creature features.
but specifically
Aquatic creature features.
aquatic horror.
Oh, okay. Aquatic creature features. So how did I know we talked a little bit about like Deep Blue Sea and things like that, but did you see the Deep House? What did you think about the Deep House?
Oh, see, I haven't seen it. He's seen it.
Joe, I think you would like it. I was actually I avoided it for a little bit just because honestly the reviews weren't that good for it. So I was like, it's not gonna be good. But it's from the directors of Inside, the French Extremity film, and granted, they haven't made a film as good as Inside since Inside, so whatever. I thought it was really fun. I was really confused by a lot of the critiques. It's just like sorry, viewers, if you don't know, this is basically a haunted house found footage movie, but in a haunted house that's underwater. So the whole movie is done with two scuba divers and like with their cameras. On that level alone, I think it's worth a watch to be like, oh, this is actually really cool how they're doing this. The success of it, your mileage may vary. I didn't think it was particularly scary, but I did find it entertaining.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was up there for me.
Yeah,
it was definitely up there.
I just think that people have an issue with the like, why don't you just swim to the surface, like get out? And it's like, yeah, I get it, but eventually they get trapped in there anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's tricky, right? I mean, that one's sort of fan footage, right? Because we're watching.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah. It's like the number one issue that people have with fan footage. And I feel like at this day and age, like, we're more than 20 years removed from the Blair Witch Project. I feel like if you're watching a found footage movie, you just kind of got to let it go. Yes, they're going to keep filming. No, they're not going to be able to get away from whatever it is that they're shooting. Just go with it.
I also feel like it's really ignorant today. Like I could, as time goes on, those arguments for why are people still filming become like they hold less and less water for me, because what do people do nowadays but film everything?
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes you get so such inventive perspectives, when you get found footage and just people like, oh, keep filming. Like I saw Creep for the first time last year on Netflix, Creep 1 and 2. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen that one.
The Mark Duplass one, not the Subway one.
Yeah. Right. The one where he's in the tub, which was
love those movies. Honestly, there's one of we recently got asked, like, hey, what movies like would you like to see turn into a franchise, or what franchises have kind of like stalled out that you would like to see renewed? I would love to see a Creep 3.
And they've been talking about it for years, but it hasn't happened yet.
That has not happened.
We'll see.
Yes. Now, speaking of that, you guys have mentioned slashers. Like, what setting would you? Because we've seen all sorts of slashers out there, but what setting would you like to see a slasher film in? Especially with the technology and all the advancements that we have, right now.
Oh. Hey, we can piggyback onto this question because I feel like with horror, it's always like, okay, like what locations are the most fun or like a scary for a horror movie?
Yeah.
But also, I like that you mentioned technology, Tyrone, because I watched Joe Lynch's Suitable Flesh yesterday, and there's a scene where Heather Graham kills someone by like rolling over them in her car over and over and over, and like they're up against a wall and she just backs into them a bunch. But the way it's shot, we see it in the car as if we're in the back seat, but we're watching her kill this guy through the rear view camera screen on her car. And I was like, that's a really cool idea. Like it's a fun idea. So yeah, I think as technology evolves, we're always like, oh yeah, well, how can we use this in horror? When it comes to settings, though, I'm very much a cruise ship. Give me a cruise ship. I want a fucking cruise ship.
Yeah. Which also tells me that you did not watch Wreck, which was...
I didn't, and I need to.
Speaking of horror comedies, very queer, 6-episode UK import about people who are trapped on a cruise ship, and there's like a giant rubber ducky serial killer.
My issue
it's more complicated than that, by the way.
Because so many of these movies that use cruise ship, like Deep Rising is a great cruise ship setting for a horror movie, but like so many... I'm even going into the Resident Evil video games, because Resident Evil, the franchise, is known for like having the last act of their game be on a boat, but it's always this fucking industrial boat with metal hulls that look the same everywhere. I'm like, no. Yeah. I want a cruise ship with a fucking dining hall, glass elevators, a casino.
Give me character, right? I mean, there's a movie that everyone loves the opening, hates the rest of the movie, Ghost Ship.
Oh yeah.
Remake Ghost Ship, but actually like keep up the energy level of that opening sequence and then give me the cruise ship experience.
Oh yeah. You could really remake Ghost Ship in a good way. You really could.
Yes. Speaking of like bad movies that deserve like remakes, because I feel that's what I feel like. I feel like stop remaking these good movies. Remake some of these ideas that nobody.
They're like middling to not good movies.
Yeah, like the stuff. Remake some. Give some context to a lot of these films that that had fun ideas but didn't necessarily have the push behind them or the writing behind it.
Or maybe even the budget, right? Like think of the number of 80s slashers where the idea is great, but they had no budget, no time, non-professional actors in some cases. I think that's one of the reasons why I both liked but was also left wanting a little bit from Thanksgiving, is because in some ways the parade sequence really reminded me of Graduation Day, which was like a not great 80s slasher, and there was opportunities to build on that, and then Eli Roth only gives us this little taste of a Thanksgiving parade, and then we have to move on. And I was just like, you know what, a parade is a really fun, scary place where there's so much going on, somebody could get at you from any number of directions.
Well, it's public places, right? Like just that fear of public places is just like sick, because you're like, oh, I'm safe, nothing can happen to me here. So when things do happen to people in public places like that, I think that makes it scarier.
Oh yeah, just running from speeding away from a killer and then pulling up to the gas station, and it's well lit, and then you're banging on the door, but no one's answering, and you're like, oh shit, this just turned terrifying. It's turned terrifying. So it's a lot to explore, a lot to definitely explore with that, Now for my next question for you guys, do you guys have a favorite decade of horror, or a decade that like stands out to you?
I don't have a favorite decade. I will say I'm over the 80s right now. I'm not anti-80s. I just think we have gone through the homaging of the 80s, which is why, actually, funnily enough, something like Thanksgiving is good for me, because that is more indebted to like the post-Scream slashes of the late 90s, early 2000s than it is the 80s. And I feel like we are finally starting to move into this 90s nostalgia than we are, and moving out of the 80s nostalgia. That being said, though, I love all the decades of films that have existed in my lifetime. So I love the 90s. I love the 2000s. I love the 2010s.
I thought you were going to be very generous and just say, I love all the decades. And then you're like, that I've been alive.
I do like the 70s and the 80s and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Like, I think every decade has its own merits and demerits.
I think that's the weirdest thing for me, is like I feel like we have a very specific relationship with decades that are older than us, because we cherry pick the best films where people say, oh, if you're going to watch a film from the 70s, it should be Jaws, Carrie, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, cool, I've seen all the classics. You didn't see a lot of the bad shit that was just kind of coming out during those time periods. Whereas when you're alive and going to the movies or watching streaming, you're probably consuming a bunch of stuff that's not super great. But also then your scope for what you can say, like, oh, well, let me tell you what the 2000s are. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of movies, because I was very active going to the cinema during that time.
That's the thing with those 80s too. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of good slasher movies from the 80s, but there's because that was like the heyday of the slasher, there's so many movies from that decade that no one's seen or heard of because they were bad. It just so happens that we were churning out slashers like candy in the 80s. So there's more to pick from when it comes to the good versus the bad.
Yeah, like a friend of the show, Brennan Klein, who used to have his own queer horror podcast and now like just kind of writes and then guests on stuff. He had a project where he was trying to watch every slasher film made in the 80s. And it, like, I think he got into triple digits. And some of these movies, I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I've never heard of this movie. And some of them are so bad. But some of them are also really great and interesting and weird.
But at the same time, though, like, I think as opposed to thinking, oh, what decade do I like the most? It's more so what fed into the films coming out in those decades. Like, why were we making these types of films in the 80s? Why were we not making a lot of these types of films in the 90s? Why were we making torture porn in the 2000s? Like, I think those questions are more fascinating to me. So I'm fascinated by decades of horror more so than I'm like, oh, this one's the best decade.
Yeah. Right. I can see that. We had a lot of because I'm interviewing people and a lot of people are giving like a lot of love to like the early 2000s, and for me it was one of the like the decades that I kind of like. I was like, it was all right,
People like to piss on that period. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of bad stuff in there, but then some of those bright spots are pretty darn bright.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's such a generic statement. You could say that about a lot of time periods, right?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I'll see a movie that like from 2003 that I'm like, oh right, I forgot that movie existed. I haven't thought about that movie in 2 decades because who cares? But yeah, again, but I feel like we're also starting to see a reappraisal of a lot of films from that time period, and it's like, like we were talking about earlier. Wow, how long before a film that got a bad reception before it gets reappraised? 5 years seems to be the case right now. I feel like we're getting a lot of 5-year ones, but yeah, we're getting a lot of these 2000s reappraisals, which I am here for.
Plus, I think we're in the era of like all these horror content creators right now, and just like I'm seeing more memorabilia and more like fan service for the movies that. And when you saw it at the time, sometimes you feel like you're the only one who was a fan of that shit. Like I saw Joyride, and I'm like, oh, I'm the only one who really fucking enjoyed this movie.
Yes.
Well, but it's also because I think that the filmmakers we are getting now were ones that grew up in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s, and not because what we were seeing for this whole 80s day. I mean, like you can say, oh, Stranger Things really ushered in this era of 80s nostalgia. It was here before that, but that really made it more popular and mainstream. But it's also because you had a lot of these horror bros who were growing up in the 80s, going to their video store, jacking off to Barbara Crampton, make a new horror movie, and let's put her in it.
Yeah,
that's what we're getting with a lot of these types of movies.
I mean, I'll confess there is something incredibly gratifying about fan service, particularly when it's done good, like when it's done well and not just in a kind of like wank off motion. I remember, so I watched Malignant opening weekend, but I started the movie like 2 hours later than everybody else. So it was like watching my entire Twitter feed just go absolutely wild for all of these things and feeling like I was already late to the game. But when I realized that that movie was paying homage to 1999's House on Haunted Hill in parts, I'm like, that is my fucking jam. I love those Dark Castle movies. But, again, not good movies. They were considered great movies when they came out. People were like, oh, the aesthetics are good, but apart from that, they're garbage. And I was like, no, those were my babies.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That's what we need. We don't need a Dark Tower reappraisal. We need a Dark
Castle.
Oh my god, Dark Tower, Dark Castle. Oh my god, we need like a Dark Castle revival. Like we had Orphan First Kill last year, but no, give us like one of those a new William Castle remake in the style of those 2000s Dark Castle films. Like that'd be awesome. I would die for that.
So you're saying Dark Castle remake ghost shit, but like the 2001 or 2 version.
And I was gonna say and bring back Juliana Margulies, but maybe not.
No. Juliana Margulies needs to go to the corner right now.
She won't come back anyway. It's fine.
Now,
girl needs a timeout.
Now, my next question for you guys: is there a horror movie that you wish you could have been on the set for? You know, when it was filmed.
Ooh, I've never been asked this question before.
It's a good question, Tyrone.
I know that's a really good question. I'm trying to think of what's a drama-filled horror. Oh, Cursed! I would love to have been on the set for Cursed. All 4 versions of that movie.
It was like, I'd like to spend 5 years on the set of Cursed, watching Wes Craven. Like, I don't want to make horror movies anymore.
That's my purgatory. I'm just stuck perpetually on the set of Cursed.
That is funny though that you naturally gravitated to something with a lot of juicy gossip and drama on it. Because mine was super boring. But
well, what is it?
I think it'd be really interesting to be on the set of Psycho to see how they filmed the shower sequence. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we got the documentary.
Not a boring choice at all.
I think that's a fair answer. It's not juicy, but I think it's enlightening.
It's obvious. That's all.
And just to see how Alfred Hitchcock was in real life, because I did see that movie that they based off of him, and I was like,
with Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
They do show them doing the shower scene with Scarlett Johansson. That movie's fine. Like it's like a big budget Lifetime movie.
Okay.
Make of that what you will.
I'm gonna say it's not the ringing endorsement that they were probably looking to slap on the poster.
I just think that the way it handles the subject matter is a bit surface level, like a Lifetime movie would do. But it's not exploitative like a Lifetime movie. But like it's just, again, when you have that cast and that topic, and then you're like, oh, this is like clear, like Oscar material, and it's not.
Ooh, actually, that's another good question. It's like movies with better cast than the material.
That's a lot.
I mean,
it's especially horror movies.
Yeah, because I was watching Krampus the other day, and I'm like, I'm just seeing the actors in there, and I'm like, oh, this is not saying that it was a bad movie, but you know, just the actors I felt were better than the actual script.
No, I mean,
Bobby's gonna kill you now.
We're doing our wrap up, to like try to figure out our best of 2023, and I've watched 3 movies in the past 24 hours, and I'm like, wow, like this movie, the script is the movie's but these actors are so much like higher than the material. So like, Diana Agron is a really shining star in Clock, which is an okay movie with a really good performance. Anna Camp is a shining star in From Black, which is also on Shudder. Okay movie, but she's really good in it. Things like that.
I find those movies so challenging because the performance can carry you through it, but then you're just constantly aware of how not as good everything else is. And it's just like, this movie is letting this person down, but god damn, this performance is giving me life. What am I supposed to do with this just juncture?
But Joe and Tyler, so this is I'd be hard pressed to tell you to make a list of these types of movies. But what I'm seeing this year, especially, is we're getting a lot of movies that are genre films. Like I would still call them a horror movie, but they primarily operate as dramas for the first 2 hours before bringing for the first 2 acts before bringing in like and making the third act like a horror movie. The problem is I tend to find the dramatic aspects of those first 2 acts very compelling, and they're original, dealing with original themes and discussing them in really interesting ways. And then the third act brings in the genre elements, like the horror stuff. And those things are so basic. It's almost like the films are made by people that have heard of horror movies, but haven't actually seen a horror movie. And they think, oh, adding these elements to the end of my film will make it will bring in this audience. But it's a lot of things I've already seen before. They're very tropey. They're very unoriginal. They're very predictable. And it deflates a lot of the goodwill the first 2 acts have put in for me. But I don't want this to be misconstrued with the argument. Like I bring Sunshine, Danny Boyle's Sunshine, where a lot of times people complained about that movie, being like, oh, it's a really good movie, but then it devolves into a slasher film, and that makes it bad.
Right.
I'm not saying these movies are bad because they become horror movies in the last act. They're just not good horror movies in the last act.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I mean, I felt like we were having that conversation a lot that coincided with there was a period of, I want to say like a year to a year and a half, maybe like within the last couple of years, where it felt like every other film was, is this woman going insane or is it a supernatural event, right? And the answer is it's always the latter, and it's not very interesting to watch, even though a lot of those performances were really good. But you thought, it's almost like you want to make this movie about like a woman's degrading mental health or like societal pressures and how they're like crushing her and this kind of stuff. But then you're trying to sell it to a genre audience because we will gobble stuff up, and horror is always profitable. So I wonder if that's where some of that tension comes from, but it's often disappointing, particularly if like, okay, you're going to shoehorn in this horror, but the horror isn't great.
Yeah. It's an issue I'm fighting a lot with movies this year specifically.
I can see that. We got Dice says Tyrone with the thought-provoking questions. Thank you, Dice. You know?
No, we've literally never been asked that before. That's a really good question.
Listen, every time someone says that, I just it fills me with glee because it just makes me feel good. JC, amazing question. Cabin Fever. Hearing Ryder Strong talk about it, it was a wild process.
Oh,
yes,
really?
Cabin Fever.
I didn't realize that there was like drama and gossip on Cabin Fever.
I don't know if it's drama and gossip, more so like it might just have been an interesting shoot. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no. JC tells more.
Yeah, I've got to listen to the commentary on that one. Got to listen to the commentary on that one. Now,
I will say, I know that Eli Roth isn't everyone's cup of tea, but he does give really interesting commentaries. Like, I remember when we were prepping for our Hostel and Hostel Part 2 episodes, I listened to the commentary on those discs, and like, he is very aware of what he is doing. And like, he is very strategic about how he is making those movies, whether or not you like them or like him. He knows what he's doing.
That's how I feel about Rob Zombie too. Like I feel like you can put them in the same category where it's like they have a lot of haters, and like I mean, granted, like for personal reasons or for non-personal reasons, whatever. But like listening to Rob Zombie on a commentary, I think it's just a very enlightening and fascinating way to spend your time. Like even just like again, like everything he does is very intentional, and so just hearing him talk about his craft, whether it's he's more apathetic about it, like with the Halloween films, or really into it, like House of a Thousand Corpses, like Devil's Rejects. He's not an idiot.
Yeah. No, I think he's got some moments. He's got some bright moments. Like I'm not always sucked into everything that he does, but like the beginning of Halloween 2, like that hospital like whole sequence.
Yeah.
That was
it's such a good fake out.
Shit. Yeah, that was the shit. You know,
I really enjoyed Halloween 2. Obviously the director's cut and not the theatrical cut. But
yeah, I mean, it's fine. No, that's the thing where it's like, again, there's so much ambition behind that Halloween 2 thing that I was blinded by in 2009 that I appreciate a lot more today.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely had its moments, you know, white horses and all, you know, it had its moments.
I think if there's one thing, like from working with Joe for these past 5 or 6 years, like the one thing that he is really put into my brain is to appreciate ambition. Even if the ambition, like the execution isn't up to par or it's bad or anything, I can appreciate the A for effort more than I ever could before I ever met him.
Well, like one of the, like what you just said, right? Where you're frustrated with these films where they're boning in kind of subpar horror. It's like, if you're going to do it, like try to be as ambitious as you're being with the other parts of your story, because it does make that difference. Like I'd always rather see someone swing big than just kind of be like, well, I'm just going to make a horror film, whatever. It's like people will gobble this up.
isn't that what we talked about? With Halloween Ends and with The Exorcist Believer, where it's like,
Oh
like Halloween
God.
Ends takes some big swings that it doesn't do very well, but I appreciate the swings.
Yes.
Exorcist Believer, I was like, I almost wish this was a fucking clusterfuck, like
Yeah.
half-star, like bullshit movie, because then I would feel something about it.
Yeah.
Whereas the way
Mhm.
I felt about Exorcist Believer, I was like, that was a movie that I saw that I will forget tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It
But
wasn't.
we all remember Exorcist 2: The Heretic because it's a notoriously terrible movie.
Yeah. Make me either love you or make me hate you. You know, either
Mhm.
one. Either
Give
one.
me
You know,
something to
but
talk about, right? Because in either facet, you will have things that you will want to talk about with people.
yes.
But when it's, oh my God, those 2.5-star movies, you're just like, I guess it's a film. I don't know what else to say about it.
That's why I was so surprised with people that were like, all these people said Exorcist Believer was so bad. It was fine. I was like, no. We all said it was aggressively fine, and that's why it's bad. Because you made an Exorcist movie that was forgettable,
Mhm.
which is bad.
Yeah. It was a sleeper. It definitely was a sleeper for me. Now, do you guys have a movie that you wish you could have seen for the first time again, like a horror film that you wish you could see again for the first time?
I'm trying to think of something that really made that much of an impact on me.
I had a really lackluster first screening of Hereditary. And it was partially like a technical issue where the theater I was seeing in dampened the sound. And we all know how important the sound design in Hereditary is. So there were moments that didn't land. Like I didn't even recognize what was happening because I wasn't getting the oral cue because of where I was seated in the theater. So I would love to go back and watch that again.
That sucks.
I'm thinking of movies that just really like the twisty turny movies that really surprise me. So I'm thinking of something like Freeway, like The Perfection, like
Oh, I
oh
mean, Trace is
god,
lucky. He got to see The Perfection in a theater, whereas the
I
rest of
did.
us just watched it on our couches.
Yeah, Perfections are like just movies that just, again, like, I mean, they surprise me because they're twisty turny. Or in the case of Freeway, it's like, oh, we're doing like 5 different genres in a 90-minute runtime.
Yeah.
But just where it kept subverting my expectations. It kept. I See You, I think, is a really good one too that no one probably knows about. But
Ooh.
it's a Helen Hunt movie from like 3 years ago called I See You. Queer writer,
Mhm.
didn't get a lot of word of mouth at its South by Southwest premiere, and so I only went to go see it because I had a free slot at a midnight slot, and I was like, yeah, I'll go see this Helen Hunt movie, and I fucking loved it because it kept surprising me, and the audience was with it the whole time. Like, I would love to see that type of a movie again, like for the first time.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
Tyrone, do you have one for this category?
You know what? A movie that I wish I could see again for the first time would probably be like something like Night of the Demons, only because it's one of those films that just scares the shit out of me with the prosthetics and just the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
So
okay.
just being able, and it's still like even nowadays, I could wake up like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, turn it on with the lights off, and I'd still be unsettled by it. You know?
Are you a fan of Night of the
It's-
Demons 2?
oh yes, I am.
I just I rewatched it for the first I rewatched it like last month, and I was like, way better than I remember it being.
It's so fun, right?
I think I like it better than the first one.
That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. A lot of people are saying they mess with
Eh,
the second one,
Okay.
more than the first one.
And again, it's a straight to DVD movie, straight to VHS movie of 1994, and it has amazing practical effects in it. It is wild how good that movie looks.
I
Yeah.
mean, if we're talking about decades, right? The 90s was really fucking good for practical effects because CGI was not good enough yet. So a lot of people, or it was too expensive and people weren't using it, or they
Yeah.
were using it very judiciously. So we're still in that era of like Bram Stoker's Dracula, like quality level, like, oh, we're really having to still do things by hand. And it's so good. Like makeup was so good in the 90s, or
I
it was
think you
really
can,
bad and it was then entertaining.
I think you can see that shift actually if you watch Tremors, which is 1990, and then Tremors 2, which is I think
Ah,
1996, but a direct-to-video
Yes.
sequel. But you can see, and I love Tremors. I think Tremors 2 is really good.
mhm.
But when the what are the leg ones called? They just call them
Oh,
I don't know, whatever the little leg things are that come out of the graboids, those don't look very good because they are CGI creatures.
Right.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, it's interesting to see the growth, especially in the '90s, because I think that's where the sweet spot is for me with prosthetics. So if you're like, that's why I love like something like Tales from the Crypt, that whole series, because just it was a whole vibe and the era and the mood, and we're getting like the knowledge and all that from the '80s, but then we're getting the new technology of the '90s. Like it was a sweet spot for me. I'll always have a special place in my heart for like late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
Sweet spot.
Sidebar. I'm circling back to the conversation about like movies we would like to see continue with, like, oh, this should become a franchise, or like make a new movie of it. How about Demon Knight 2 with like a contemporary Jada Pinkett? Bring back Billy Zane. He's still working. Like, how amazing would a sequel to that movie
or
be?
Just do another Tales from the Crypt movie. Like, just
no, that's not what I want, because then we'll get like Bordello of Blood.
Okay, yeah, you want specifically Demon Knight 2. Demon Knight again.
But also Ernest Dickerson has to be back.
Yes,
like
I need him
making. Oh my god, Bones too. There's a movie that needs a fucking reappraisal and like to be in the popular conscious, because that movie is so fucking good.
That is a movie that when we covered it, I was shocked when I watched it, because I only heard the Snoop Dogg horror movie. I only heard bad things about it, and I watched it and I was like, this is pretty good. Like, unironically, this is pretty good.
The fucking visuals in that movie are so good. Ooh.
Like I still remember my first viewing. Like it was a double feature. I went to Blockbuster and I picked up Joyride and I picked up Bones. Watched it.
You had a great night.
Yes. It was amazing. It was definitely amazing. Now my next question, for you guys is, does horror do anything for you specifically for your mental health? Because a lot of people say that it may help them in certain ways, or it may be a sort of a release, for them. And like I get all sorts of answers, when I ask that question. So does it do anything, at all for you guys as far as like your mental health?
This might be a pretty basic answer for me, but they affect me the same way a roller coaster does. Like, they give me a thrill. Now granted though, for something that's super depressing, I don't know what's a really depressing horror movie that's like, just like, it's like not a fun one.
Eden Lake.
Yes, sure, let's use Eden Lake as an example.
Oh my god, how dare you.
Yeah, that's not a fun movie, but there's something that like leaves my body when I finish watching a movie like that. Like, there's just I don't know. It's a de-stressor for me, to be honest, because I can stress about the events in a movie and not the events in my real life. Like, I do understand, but I've never understood why people are like, I can't do horror. There's enough horrors in real life. And I was like, yeah, that's why you have the fake ones to alleviate that. But
it's called catharsis. You get to conquer it at the end of the film, and you feel better for it.
Yeah.
Or you revel in it because you realize, oh, this movie ended very badly, kind of like real life. Cool. I mean, something I can sympathize or empathize with.
I say that, and like, I'm very much like, if I'm just like having a fun time, I'll put in like a fun horror movie, not a really depressing one. Whereas my husband, he'll just throw on Eden Lake just for shits and giggles.
Shits and giggles.
Lake Mungo for days, right?
Oh, Lake Mungo was another one. Snuck up on me. Started that at midnight. Holy shit. It's bad idea.
I like Lake Mungo, but yeah, that's one of those where I think maybe the hype kill. I've seen it 2, maybe 3 times. I like Lake Mungo a lot. It did not affect me in the same way it did so many other people. Like, it really affects people.
How about Martyrs?
Oh yeah, I love Martyrs.
Shit.
Well, because Martyrs makes you think, though. That's a movie that asks you to really ponder certain like very deep philosophical questions, and I do like a movie, horror otherwise, that will do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those movies I can't watch again. I can't watch Martyrs again. Like,
I'll show people Martyrs.
Jess is like, I could show my brother-in-law this, but not enough kids die. Ugh, if only.
I'm telling you, like, I showed him so many different movies, and he was like, they were just disturbing. They weren't scary. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? What's the difference?
I'll hit you.
like I'm a big fan of High Tension, so a lot of people were recommending Martyrs to me, and I was just like, these are not the same. These are not the same at all.
See, I think like Trace and I have a challenging relationship with High Tension. We really like it, but we feel like the film doesn't play fair. I think I'm a little more generous to it than not, because I really like the way that Aja directs, and I think the movie is like gross pretty in a very compelling way. But yeah, I would say that one's more of a thrill ride. Like I saw that in theaters before I really watched a lot of international horror films, and it's wild. Like it's such an exciting entry if you're trying to get somebody hooked on like non-English horror films.
Yeah, but see, I even think I would show them Inside before I showed them High Tension.
Well, I mean, you know how I'm gonna say that.
I know you would too, but I would also show someone Martyrs. Well, it depends, right? Like, do you want like a thrill ride of a film? That's going to be Inside or High Tension. Right. Do you want something that's going to gut you from the inside out? That's going to be Martyrs.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Yeah, Martyrs. I really enjoyed the first half of Martyrs, and then the second half, I was like, holy shit, what's going on? And then it just kept getting like not worse as in bad. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of imagination, but holy shit, like it had me. Yeah, it was a tough to get through that second
Martyrs half. That I saw, that was a college. I was a sophomore, maybe a junior in college when I saw that, and it would have been like around 08, 09, 2010. And that's the first time I remember being so affected by a movie that I felt lifeless the next day. Like I remember going to class and waiting for my class door to open up and just being like, I don't feel anything right now. Like that, and that was the first time a movie had done that to me.
I had that with Saving Private Ryan.
That is a horror movie.
Yeah. I got out of there and was like, I think I need to take a nap. I can't function. My brain is not okay right now.
Yeah.
Now, we got a couple people. Jason's.
I've told this anecdote several times, but I did show my non-horror loving mother the remake of Last House on the Left, and she liked it. She said, I believe her exact words were, "See, that's a horror movie I can get behind because there's an emotional component, like it's parents wanting to protect their daughter." And I was like, that's in a lot of horror movies, but okay.
Also, that is a wild takeaway. Like that is a very specific and narrow takeaway from that movie.
Wow. She liked it though, and that's why I know I can show her whatever I want because I sat through The Last House on the Left with her, and she was fine.
Whereas I can tell you that making my mother watch Cronenberg's Crash was not a bonding experience, and my mother does not trust my taste in movies now.
I would no. My mom would be like, "This is weird. Like that would be way too out of her ballpark."
Yeah, my parents at this point, they don't trust me when it comes to recommendations. I think I threw on the Horrors of Dolores Roach, and they really enjoyed that. But you know, I'm the guy who would come over and I'd be like, oh, let's watch Bruno, and then the first
like the Sacha Baron Cohen one with the talking penis. Bruno.
They're just like, what the hell is wrong with this kid? What the hell is wrong with this kid?
I think it's our responsibility as children of like older people, though, to be like, you know what, we're keeping you young, we're keeping you relevant within the conversation. You need to be able to reference some of these things.
Yes, most definitely. But I thank you guys, for rocking out with me. I've got one more question, before we wrap up this interview. But this has been so awesome. I've got to learn a little bit more about you guys, through the lens of horror. So it's been so dope. It's been so dope. You've answered all my questions, awesomely so far. So. Let's see. The last one would be if you could spend the day in the life of your favorite. Well, it might not be your favorite horror villain, but it could be a horror villain. It could be an entity. It could be a person. It could be, a thing. Like, it could be anything or anybody. Who or what would it be? 24 hours.
I feel like there's, again, basic answers and like interesting answers, and I'm afraid of giving a basic
Well, that's the
one.
thing. I'm trying to be like, well, which one wouldn't put me in a lot of pain, like physical pain, or
If you're a villain, you're the one inflicting it.
well, no, it could be anyone. It could be a villain. It could be a character in a horror movie, or maybe like the world of the horror movie. God.
Okay, I'll tell you mine. Again, I'm prefacing this by saying it's probably basic, but I would want to give Freddy Krueger a go, minus the child molestation, all that fun stuff, and hopefully the burns don't hurt too much anymore. But being able to wield the power of dreams and getting my sweet revenge on those children for the sins of the parents by constructing these elaborate kind of nearly Final Destination level traps would be, I think, very interesting.
All right, cool. I want to be Death in the Final Destination franchise. Because...
No, boring. That's piggybacking on mine. Get your own answer.
No, I would love to be in the world of Joseph Kahn's Detention, because that sounds like it would be a total blast. I don't need to be the killer. I just want to be in that world, because it seems like anything can happen in that world. And viewers, if you've never seen Joseph Kahn's Detention, you are missing out.
That is a wildly divisive pick. Also, I feel like 24 hours in that world would actually, it'd be like 12 hours, because you're just going at double speed, because everything in that movie just flies. It
might cure my ADHD. Like, it might be its own form of Adderall, just in movie form.
All right, those are awesome answers. I laughed at Joe's answer, because that's my dad's answer, Freddy Krueger. But his are for more petty reasons. He wants to get in the dreams and create nightmares for his enemies or whatever. He's like, this is why. This is the whole reason, But great answers, great answers, you guys. Great answers.
Tyrone, your dad might enjoy Nicolas Cage's dream scenario then, because that's kind of where that movie starts to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely got to check that out. But I want to thank you guys again for hanging out with me, rocking out with me for almost 2 hours. It's been an awesome conversation. I had so much fun on you guys' podcast, Horror Queer, so I couldn't wait to, get you on here. I love and respect what you guys do. You guys are so passionate, and again, just so detailed. I was like, holy shit. And I'm sure you probably get that reaction from some people.
I hope you walked away from that recording being like, I learned a lot today.
I learned that Trace knows a lot about older divas.
It's a thing. That's all it is.
Listen. I learned things. I learned Cloche. I'm now.
Oh my god!
Cloche. Oh my god!
I'd forgotten about Cloche.
Yes. Certain terms, but that is the mark of a great podcast. You take away something and you learn things that you haven't learned, before. So, I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. And thank you to everybody in the comments. Dice, Polo, Jaleesa, Michael, thank you for stopping by. Bobby, everybody for hanging out. Evan, thank you for stopping by. If I missed you, my apologies. But yes, that's been another episode of Evol Live. We're going to be back tomorrow night to discuss top 5 psychological, horror, with some people, a few of my favorite folks in the horror community. So, definitely make sure if you're checking this out, you check that out too tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And make sure that you check out Horror Queers with Trace and Joe. The links are in the description, most definitely. And their podcast is digestible everywhere that you can digest podcasts. And you guys have anything else to say before we wrap up tonight?
Thanks for having us.
You hit all the bait. Yeah, thank you. This was fun. It's honestly nice to come on one of these things and just talk.
Yes. I love talkers. It makes my job a whole lot easier. It makes it a whole lot easier. But yes, as always, peace, love, and horror folks, and we're out of here, and we're out of here, and we're out of here.